Look at your skin right now. Whatever color it is, whatever shade falls across your hand or your arm when the light catches it, it wasn't always this way. Not in your family, not across the arc of your ancestry, not in the long, stranger-than-fiction story of what it means to be human. The color you're wearing today is the result of one of the most dramatic biological transformations in the history of your species. And it happened not once, but twice, in opposite directions, for reasons that have nothing to do with what you were probably taught. It happened because the sun was trying to kill you. Not you personally, but your ancestors. Every single one of them. And the ones who survived did something written into every cell of your skin right now. Something science has only recently begun to fully decode. Your skin is not just a covering, it is a timeline. To understand why, you have to go back. Not a few centuries, not a few thousand years. You have to go back nearly 2 million years to a version of the human story so alien it barely resembles the world you know. There are no cities, no clothing, no glass windows diffusing the afternoon light. There are only open savannas, enormous equatorial skies, and bodies. Bodies that had to survive under that sun every day, from dawn until darkness finally gave them permission to rest. And those bodies were not the color you might assume. This is where the story gets strange. Your earliest ancestors, the ones who first looked recognizably like you, upright, large-brained, walking on 2 feet, were not dark-skinned. They were, according to the best available fossil and genetic evidence, covered in light skin hidden beneath thick, dark fur, exactly like the other great apes alive on Earth today. Look at a chimpanzee or a gorilla. Beneath their dark hair, most of them have pale, almost pinkish skin. Your ancestors had the same arrangement. The fur was the protection. The skin underneath didn't need to be anything in particular because it almost never saw the sun. Then something changed. The transformation began, researchers believe, somewhere around 1.2 to 1.7 million years ago. This is when both the archaeological record and the genetic record start to show a shift. And it coincided with another biological change. One that seems completely unrelated until you understand the physics and the chemistry underneath it. Your ancestors started losing their fur. Why they lost it is its own remarkable story. The leading theory, developed and refined by anthropologist Nina Jablonski at Penn State University, is that as early humans began covering larger distances on foot, hunting prey across open terrain, foraging through the heat of the day, ranging far beyond the shade of the forest canopy, they faced a cooling problem that other animals simply didn't have. 4-legged animals can pant efficiently. Humans, walking upright and sprinting after prey over long distances, needed something better. They needed to cool an enormous brain while keeping the body moving. Fur traps heat. Sweat glands release it. And humans have more sweat glands per square inch than almost any other primate on the planet. The cooling system won out. The fur began to thin. Over hundreds of thousands of years, it disappeared almost entirely from the body. But losing the fur created a new problem, a catastrophic one. Beneath that vanishing layer of protective hair was pale, exposed skin. And pale skin, facing the full intensity of equatorial African sunlight for hours every single day, is a biological disaster waiting to happen. Ultraviolet radiation, the UV light that streams through clear sky, does 2 things that matter enormously to your biology. First, it destroys folate. Folate, also called vitamin B9, is essential for DNA synthesis and for the healthy development of a fetus's nervous system. When UV radiation penetrates pale, unprotected skin, it breaks down folate in the bloodstream. Low folate in pregnant women leads to neural tube defects, catastrophic failures in the development of the brain and spinal cord. It leads to miscarriage. It leads, in the brutal and unsentimental arithmetic of natural selection, to fewer surviving offspring. Second, UV radiation causes mutations in the DNA of skin cells. In a modern hospital, skin cancer is often caught, treated, survivable. On the open savanna 2 million years ago, it was not. So evolution did what evolution always does when death pressure is this extreme. It found a solution. The solution was melanin. Melanin is a pigment. It is produced by specialized cells in your skin, called melanocytes. and it is one of the most efficient, most elegant natural sunscreens that biology has ever produced. When UV radiation strikes your skin, melanin absorbs it, scatters it, neutralizes it before it can reach the deeper layers where your DNA and your folate-carrying blood supply live. Dark skin doesn't just look different from pale skin, it functions differently. It is biologically engineered for high UV environments in a way that pale skin, whatever its other properties, simply is not. What the fossil record and the genetic evidence tell us is that sometime between 1 and 2 million years ago, the selection pressure was so intense and so relentless that within a relatively short window of evolutionary time, the human lineage began a dramatic shift. From light skin hidden beneath fur to deeply melanated dark skin, fully exposed to the African sun. This is the transformation that almost every textbook and almost every casual conversation about race gets completely backward. Most people assume that dark skin is the ancient baseline and light skin is the evolved adaptation. The timeline tells the opposite story. The first chapter of your ancestors' skin history was pale. The second chapter, dark, emerged as a response to losing hair and standing exposed under the sun. And what comes next is where it gets even more surprising. Genetics researcher Sarah Tishkoff at the University of Pennsylvania has spent years studying skin pigmentation genes across African populations. What her work reveals is something remarkable. The genetic diversity in skin tone within Africa is far greater than the variation found across all other continents combined. Africa does not contain one baseline skin color. It contains more variation in pigmentation than the rest of the world put together. What this means is that there was never a single human skin color from which everything else diverged. The variation itself is ancient. The story is more complex, more layered, more interesting than a simple gradient from one shade to another. So your ancestors became dark-skinned. And for a very long time, that was the human story. Dark skin under an African sun. A near-perfect biological match between the environment and the body. Then humans moved. Between 70,000 and 100,000 years ago, modern Homo sapiens began migrating out of Africa. They moved north through the Middle East, east into Central Asia, eventually into the cold, cloud-covered, sun-starved regions of northern Europe, into latitudes where winter stretched for months, where the sun barely climbed above the horizon, where UV radiation fell to a fraction of what it was at the equator. And here is where the equation reversed. Remember that UV radiation destroys folate. In high UV equatorial environments, dark skin protects against that destruction. But UV radiation also does something entirely different, something your body depends on. It triggers the synthesis of vitamin D in your skin cells. Vitamin D doesn't function like a typical vitamin. It acts more like a hormone. It regulates calcium absorption, supports bone density, modulates the immune system, influences brain function, affects mood. Without adequate vitamin D, children develop rickets, soft, malformed, painful bones. Adults suffer immune dysfunction, increased susceptibility to certain autoimmune diseases, heightened risk of depression, and multiple sclerosis. In a world before supplements and fortified food, vitamin D deficiency was not just uncomfortable, it was potentially lethal. To produce vitamin D, your skin needs UV radiation. In Northern Europe, there is very little of it. What UV light does filter through winter clouds, through mist, through overcast skies, is weak, diffuse, barely enough. Dark skin, so brilliantly suited to the African equator, became a liability in Stockholm or Edinburgh. The same melanin that blocked the sun's damage also blocked the sun's benefit. Populations who had migrated north and stayed there, who had made Northern Europe their home across thousands of generations, faced a new selection pressure. Produce less melanin. Capture what little UV light is available. Synthesize enough vitamin D to survive the winter. Have children. Pass on those genes. The skin began to lighten. This is the second transformation. And it happened independently, in multiple places. Researcher Mark Stoneking at the Max Planck Institute for Evolutionary Anthropology has studied the specific genetic variants responsible for reduced melanin production in European and East Asian populations. What his research shows is striking. The mutations that caused light skin in Europeans and those that produce lighter skin in East Asians are largely different genes, different mutations. Separate populations arrived at the same general outcome, lighter skin, through entirely different evolutionary paths. It was not a single mutation that spread around the world. It was the same environmental logic, rewriting the biology of separate populations separately. The pressure was identical. The sun was the same problem, just not enough of it. And biology, in the way it always does, found multiple routes to the same answer. Here is something almost no one considers. The timeline for these adaptations is staggering in how recent they are. Genetic studies, including work examining ancient European DNA, suggest that many of the gene variants associated with very light skin in European populations only became common within the last 10,000 years. Some became prevalent in the last 5,000. In evolutionary terms, where a single generation is a rounding error and 1,000,000 years is a normal chapter, 5,000 years is this morning. It is yesterday. It is barely a breath. The skin you see in the mirror, your color, your shade, wherever it falls on the spectrum between the deepest brown and the palest tone, is not an ancient, permanent truth written at the beginning of time. It is a recent revision, a draft, an answer your ancestors' bodies gave to a changing world. And the world has changed again. You live under artificial light. You wear clothing that blocks UV radiation through most of your day. You apply sunscreen that mimics the protective function of melanin when you go outside. Many of you take vitamin D supplements. The twin pressures that shaped your ancestors' skin over hundreds of thousands of years, too much sun here, too little sun there, are now being softened, diluted, overridden by technology. What does evolution do when the pressure disappears? Honestly, no one knows yet. The experiment is too new. You are living in the opening paragraphs of a chapter whose ending nobody has read. But you can read the beginning. Look at your skin right now. Whatever color it is the answer your ancestors' bodies gave to a question the sun kept asking again and again, generation after generation, on two different continents in two opposite directions. The color you're wearing is not who you are. It is a record of where you have been. A map encoded in melanin. A story told without words across 2,000,000 years pressed into the surface of the body you were given. And it was never, not once, anything more or anything less than survival.